My husband secretly transferred my inheritance to his mistress. I made him regret it. The air in my late father's study still smelled of old leather and pipe tobacco, a scent that clung to the walls like a ghost. I sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes, sorting through his things 2 months after the funeral. My fingers brushed over a cracked photo frame, Dad and me at my college graduation, his proud grin wide enough to split the sky. Grief hit me like a fist, but I swallowed it down. I had to keep moving. That's when I found it. A bank statement tucked inside a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby, a book he'd loved. The date was recent, too recent. My inheritance, $2.5 million. The safety net he'd left me was gone, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. My breath caught, sharp and jagged, as my eyes locked on David's name at the bottom. My husband, the man who'd promised to handle the estate because I was too emotional to deal with it. I'm Lydia, 38, not the type to crumble. I've spent years as a freelance journalist, digging into corporate scams, chasing leads through sleepless nights. My hair's a mess of dark curls I barely tame, and my hazel eyes, I've been told, cut like glass when I'm pissed. I trusted David too much, though. That was my mistake. He's 42, handsome in that effortless way. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sandy hair graying at the temples and a smile that could sell ice to penguins. He's a financial advisor, always talking about smart moves and big wins. I thought we were a team. Now, staring at that paper, my chest burned with something uglier than sadness. Suspicion. Dinner that night was a quiet war. I set the table with our chipped plates, the ones we'd laughed about keeping after 12 years together. David shoveled lasagna into his mouth, oblivious to the storm brewing in me. I picked at my food, then slid the statement across the table like a grenade. Why's there a transfer I don't recognize? My voice was calm, too calm. His fork froze mid-air, and for a split second, his blue eyes flickered with panic. Then came the lie, smooth as silk. It's an investment account, babe. For us. I didn't want to bore you with details. He flashed that grin, but it didn't reach his eyes. I nodded, sipping my wine, tasting nothing but acid. He was hiding something. I knew it in my bones. Later, after he'd crashed on the couch with a beer, I slipped into his office. My hands trembled as I booted up his laptop. Hacking's a trick I picked up chasing stories. His password was still our anniversary. 612, idiot. The emails hit me like a slap. David and someone named Vanessa. Flirty at first. Missed you last night. Babe. Then transactional. Once it's in my account, we're set, she wrote. Lydia won't even notice. My throat tightened, bile rising. Vanessa Cole. I Googled her. Actress 29, all pouty lips and sharp cheekbones. A rising star in trashy thrillers with 1 million Instagram followers. Her latest post? A mirror selfie in a low-cut red dress, smirking like she owned the world. My world. I scrolled further, and that's when I saw it. A scanned power of attorney with my signature. Except I'd never signed it. David had forged it, used it to move my money, legally, to her. My vision blurred, not with tears, but fury. I wanted to smash his laptop, his face, everything. Instead, I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo of the screen. Evidence, my lifeline. Then I heard it. His voice, low and urgent, from the living room. He was on the phone. Vanessa's pushing me to leave Lydia, he muttered. She thinks the money's hers now. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of rage and betrayal. He didn't know I was listening. He didn't know I was awake. I sank into the desk chair, clutching the phone so hard my knuckles whitened. Vanessa's emails replayed in my mind. Her casual greed, his spineless compliance. 12 years of marriage, and this was what it came to? I thought of Dad, his rough hands teaching me to ride a bike, his voice telling me to fight for what's mine. David thought he could bury me in grief and steal my future. Vanessa thought she could play queen with my legacy. They were wrong. I leaned forward, staring at the forged document glowing on the screen, and whispered to myself, "You don't know who you're messing with." The house was silent except for David's snores. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced, plotting, sharpening. I wasn't just a widow's daughter or a cheated wife anymore. I was a journalist with a story, and they were about to become the headline. Sleep didn't come that night, but clarity did. My eyes stung from staring at David's laptop, the forged power of attorney searing into my brain like a brand. I could have stormed into the living room, shaken him awake, and screamed until the neighbors called the cops. But that's not me. Rage doesn't make me loud, it makes me sharp. By morning, I'd decided I'd bury David and Vanessa in their own mess, and I'd do it my way. No tears, no pleas. Just cold, calculated justice. I started with the pros. Mara, my private investigator, met me at a greasy diner downtown. She was in her 50s, wiry and tough, with cropped gray hair and a scar slicing through her left eyebrow, souvenir from her cop days. She slid into the booth, her leather jacket creaking, and dropped a folder on the table. "Your husband's a sloppy crook," she said, voice gravelly. "The transfer's clean on paper, thanks to that fake signature. But Vanessa's account's still fat with your cash. She hasn't spent a dime yet." I smirked, sipping burnt coffee. "Too busy posing for selfies, I bet." Mara snorted. "Exactly. Arrogant little diva." Next was Tom, my lawyer, a lanky guy in his 40s with a mop of brown hair and glasses perched on his nose. We met in his cluttered office, walls lined with law books and a dying fern in the corner. He peered at the photo of the forged document on my phone, then whistled low. "This is gold, Lydia. Forgery's a felony, and if we can prove intent, David's toast. Vanessa's liable too, receiving stolen goods." His excitement fueled mine, a flicker of hope cutting through the bitterness. "How fast can we move?" I asked. He grinned. "Fast enough to catch them with their pants down." Playing dumb with David was harder than I'd thought. He shuffled into the kitchen that morning, bleary-eyed, and kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong. "You okay, babe? You look tired." His voice was syrupy, fake concern dripping off it. My skin crawled, but I forced a smile. "Just missing Dad," I said, stirring oatmeal I wouldn't eat. He nodded, oblivious, and I watched him scroll his phone, probably texting her. Every second stung, but I held it together. I needed time. That afternoon, I struck. Vanessa's latest Instagram story popped up. Her lounging in a penthouse, my penthouse, bought with my money, sipping champagne in a low-cut black dress, captioned, "Living my truth." Her smugness was a gift. I opened a burner account and sent a tip to Celeb Buzz, a sleazy gossip blog I'd worked with before. Vanessa Cole's new pad. Whose cash paid for it? Within hours, the post was live. Vague enough to dodge libel, juicy enough to spark fire. X lit up with speculation. She's dating a married guy. Sugar daddy vibes. Vanessa's fans split. Half defended her, half smelled blood. I leaned back in my chair, a grim satisfaction blooming in my chest. David's sister, Claire, made it personal that night. She'd invited us to dinner at her pristine suburban house, all white rugs and passive-aggressive digs. Claire was 40, pinched and prim, with blonde hair pulled tight in a bun and a permanent sneer. She'd never liked me, thought I was too edgy for her golden boy brother. Over roast chicken, she smirked across the table. "You're so paranoid lately, Lydia. Checking bank statements? Maybe David deserves someone less controlling." Her words sliced deep, and I gripped my fork until my knuckles whitened. She knew, maybe not everything, but enough. David chuckled nervously beside me, oblivious to the venom. "Claire, come on, she's just stressed." I stayed quiet, but inside I was screaming. She'd picked her side. Later, alone in my car, I found a voicemail from Dad on my phone, buried in old messages. His voice crackled through. "Lydia, don't let anyone take what's yours. You're tougher than they think." It was from weeks before he died, a random pep talk I'd forgotten. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and sudden, but I didn't let them fall. He was right. This wasn't just about money, it was about us. I replayed it twice, his words stealing my spine. David and Vanessa wouldn't just regret this, they'd pay. Tom called the next day. Subpoena went through. Vanessa's bank records show your $2.5 million sitting pretty. She's too cocky to move it. My pulse raced. And David? I asked. We've got enough for a criminal complaint. Forgery, theft. Cops'll handle him. You ready to pull the trigger? I didn't hesitate. Do it. That afternoon, I filed the civil suit against Vanessa, restitution plus damages, and the criminal charge against David. Then I tipped off a local news crew on X. Police raid at Vanessa Cole's penthouse, 3 p.m. Bring cameras. I wanted it public. I wanted her humiliated. The raid aired live. I watched from my laptop, heart pounding, as cops swarmed her building. Vanessa stumbled out in a silk robe, hair wild, shrieking at the cameras. This is a setup! I'm innocent! Her fans turned fast, Vanessa. The thief trended within minutes. X posts poured in. Stealing from a dead guy's daughter? Low. Her career's done. I didn't cheer. I just stared, feeling the weight lift, replaced by something colder. Vindication. David came home that night, a wreck. His tie was loose, his face slick with sweat. He threw his keys on the counter, voice shaking. Lydia, what the hell did you do? Vanessa's threatening to ruin me. She says I dragged her into this. He paced, wild-eyed, like a trapped animal. I stood by the sink, arms crossed, my voice ice. You dragged yourself into this, David. You and your little actress thought you could play me. Guess what? I play harder. His jaw dropped, realization dawning too late. Lydia, I didn't mean... I cut him off, stepping closer, my hazel eyes boring into his. Save it for the judge. The house felt too big after he stormed out, slamming the door. I poured a glass of wine, my hands steady now, and scrolled 10. Vanessa's meltdown was still trending. Her PR team scrambling, failing. Claire texted me, You're a bitch, Lydia. He's family. I didn't reply. Family didn't forge signatures. Family didn't steal legacies. I sat in the dark, Dad's voicemail echoing in my head, and planned my next move. The war wasn't over, but I was winning. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, a sterile stage for the chaos about to unfold. I sat in the plaintiff's chair, spine straight, my dark curls pulled back tight. My hazel eyes tracked every move. David slouched beside his lawyer. Vanessa perched like a wounded bird in the defendant's box. The gallery buzzed with reporters and rubberneckers, phones silenced, but fingers itching to tweet. This wasn't just a trial. It was a reckoning, and I'd orchestrated every note. Vanessa went first, playing her part to perfection. She wore a demure gray dress, low cut, of course, a last stab at sympathy. Her black hair swept into a ponytail, mascara streaking as she dabbed fake tears. David tricked me, she sniffled to the judge, a stern woman with silver hair and no patience for theatrics. He said it was his money, that his wife didn't care. I'm a victim here. Her voice cracked, Oscar-worthy, but her trembling hands gave her away. I clenched my jaw, tasting the bile of her audacity. The gallery murmured. Some bought it, some didn't. I didn't care. Evidence would bury her. David's turn was uglier. His lawyer, a sweaty guy in a cheap suit, argued I'd entrapped him by staying silent. My client acted under duress. His marriage was failing, and Miss Cole pressured him. David nodded, eyes down, sandy hair mussed like he'd just rolled out of bed. He looked small, not the charming man I'd married. I wanted to feel sorry for him, but all I felt was disgust. 12 years, and he'd sold me out for a fling and a quick buck. Then I took the stand. The air shifted as I stood, my gray blazer sharp against the courtroom's drabness. I swore the oath, voice steady, and faced the judge. My husband forged my signature to steal my inheritance, $2.5 million my father left me. He gave it to his mistress, Vanessa Cole, who knew exactly where it came from. I slid the forged power of attorney across the table, my photo from that sleepless night glaring up at us. Then I played Dad's voicemail, his gravelly tone filling the room. Don't let anyone take what's yours. David flinched. Vanessa stared at her lap. I held up the emails next. Her gloating, him plotting. They thought I'd roll over, I said, locking eyes with the judge. They were wrong. The twist came mid-trial, a gut punch I hadn't seen coming. Claire took the stand as a defense witness. She strode in, blonde bun gleaming, her cream blouse pristine, and looked at me like I was dirt. Lydia's always been a control freak, she said, voice clipped. David needed freedom. I helped him with the paperwork. Legally, I thought, to get him out. The gallery gasped. My stomach lurched, not from shock, but betrayal's slow burn. She'd known all along, maybe even pushed him. David's own sister, choosing greed over blood. I gripped the table, nails digging into wood, but kept my face stone. She wouldn't break me. The judge didn't buy the sob stories. Her ruling came fast, sharp as a gavel's crack. David. Guilty of forgery and theft. 5 years, no parole for 3. Vanessa. Ordered to repay every cent plus $500,000 in punitive damages, her accounts frozen. She'd be bankrupt by week's end. The gallery erupted. Reporters scrambled. X lit up with justice for Lydia. I didn't smile. Victory tasted like ash when your life's in ruins. After, I sold the house. Too many ghosts. David's laugh, Dad's shadow. I moved into a downtown loft. All glass and steel, a fresh start at 38. The money came back, wired into my account with a court stamp, but it didn't fill the hole. I wrote an exposé instead. How I took back my legacy. A raw 5,000-word piece that went viral on Medium. Readers called me a badass. I just felt tired. David sent a letter from prison, scrawled in shaky pen. I'm sorry. Lydia, I was weak. Forgive me? I burned it in the sink, watching flames eat his words. Vanessa's last X post was a rant. Toxic haters ruined my life. Before she vanished offline, her career a smoking wreck. Claire called once, voice shrill. You destroyed him, you know. My brother's gone because of you. I hung up, her venom echoing but not sticking. She'd made her bed. That night, I sat on my balcony, whiskey in hand, the city sprawling below. The air was cool, sharp against my skin, and I muttered to myself, they thought I'd break. They forgot who I am. It wasn't triumph, just truth.